This is some really awful news for Black Widow and for Marvel Studios in general, and really shows how fans actually feel about the Black Widow movie. Now, the opening weekend for this movie was decent, but in my video that I was talking about the box office breakdown for the opening weekend, I said in that video, it really depends on how the second weekend performs. That has always been the case with these blockbuster movies. The fans will go out and see this movie in its opening weekend. What really matters is, will fans return for the second weekend? Will word of mouth actually help this film get more people to go see it? Will the normies go see this film? All of that really matters and really hinges on the second weekend. And this movie proved that nobody actually wanted a Black Widow movie. Nobody actually really cared, at least when it comes to the general audiences. People know what happened to Black Widow in Endgame, and they weren't going to have any of it. People would have been way more excited about this movie if this movie actually came out when it was supposed to, which was right after Civil War. That would have been a great and perfect place to make this movie happen and to release this movie. And Black Widow, Scarlett Johansson, deserved having a movie come out being the first female superhero movie for the Marvel Cinematic Universe before Captain Marvel. I will never forgive that. I will never get over that, because that is a complete and utter disgrace towards Scarlett Johansson, Black Widow, the character, and everything else. But this is what Marvel is doing. They're pushing for all this new stuff. Oh, we got a new female superhero. We got all this new content, and all of it is hinging on woke nonsense. That is what Marvel is pushing right now to the fullest extent. Well, probably not to the fullest extent. I'm sure that they could go even harder if they wanted to, and I'm sure that they will, and we're going to be seeing more of that in the future as well. But today, we're going to be talking about Black Widow, because Black Widow has the largest second weekend box office drop of any MCU movie. That is horrendous. That is horrendous stuff right there. So after breaking pandemic records over its opening weekend, Black Widow falls 67% at the box office and comes in second behind Space Jam 2. Black Widow suffers the steepest drop for any MCU movie in its second weekend in theaters. Ever since March 2020, box office performance has been deeply altered by the pandemic. Theaters were closed for much of 2020, and the few major movies that were allowed to debut by the end of the year performed on much smaller levels than they would have normally. So, of course, with this year, we had like A Quiet Place Part 2 holding the record, and then F9, and now Black Widow. Black Widow, the very first movie of the MCU's expansive Phase 4 slate, finally arrived last weekend after multiple delays. Though it was widely acknowledged that Scarlett Johansson-led film wouldn't debut to the same numbers the MCU typically courts, it was expected to bring in much-needed crowds to theaters. And we weren't expecting it to pull those numbers, which is why it was also very important to see how it performed in its second weekend comparatively with other MCU movies. So, and it did awful. It did absolutely just awful in the second weekend. And now apparently even theaters are really mad at Disney and Marvel about this. They're mad at them for putting this movie on Disney Plus. A lot of theaters are saying that is what hurt this movie, and that might have had some of an impact on it, but I don't think that it really had as much of an impact as you think, because on Disney Plus, in order to watch Black Widow, you have to pay $30, which is insane. That is an insane amount of money for a movie on a streaming platform. That is ridiculous. There's absolutely no way that I would ever pay that much to watch a movie on a streaming service, especially a movie like Black Widow. So I don't think that really hurt the sales as much as they think. I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that people just don't want a Black Widow movie. They know how her story ends. They know what happens to her in Endgame. I'm sure that a lot of fans are pissed about the fact that we are getting a Black Widow movie now instead of when we were supposed to get this movie, which was after Civil War. So, you know, this movie could have been a great movie to release in late 2016, early 2017, and that would have been a great time to release this movie, which, you know, would have been like 4 or 5 years ago, which is absolutely insane. But of course, instead of doing that, they decided to push for Captain Marvel being the fearless, brave, you know, super amazing, incredible superhero movie where basically Captain Marvel acts like a dude the entire movie with no emotion. In fact, even worse than a dude, because she doesn't even show any emotion during the entire movie. She's just an awful character. And that is who they decided to push to break the glass ceiling for female superhero movies. So this is not looking good for Black Widow. This is not looking good for Marvel. And it's going to be interesting to see how the other Marvel movies perform as well. This does not make Black Widow a failure. Well, with that big of a drop in the second opening weekend, that is nothing to scoff at. That just isn't. As the box office is still recovering and producing numbers that are lower than normal. Yes, but you also have to keep in mind that this is a movie that performed worse than any other MCU movie to date in its second weekend. In a universe where we have Ant-Man and the Wasp. In a universe where we have Thor: The Dark World. This movie performed worse than those. That's not good. Captain Marvel. In a world where we have Captain Marvel performed better in his second weekend than Black Widow. Yikes, that is not good. So, let me know what you think about this in the comments below. Have you seen Black Widow yet? What do you think about the movie? I don't think it's the worst Marvel movie yet, but I don't think that it's nearly one of the best either. I think that it is definitely lower tier as far as the Marvel movies go. But I don't think it's the worst thing that they have ever produced. I think that Captain Marvel still holds that spot very clearly. So, hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Subscribe if you're new. I'd appreciate that a lot, and I will talk to you later. Bye.
Stay